Start.
A smile is like a SIM card, and a life is like a cell phone. Whenever you insert the SIM card of smile, a beautiful day is activated. With these fabulous lines, I wish everyone a very, very delightful and sparkling Wednesday morning. I welcome you all to our third day of International Conference on Holistic Wellness, ICHW 2021. A new day, a new ray, a new light, a new insight. With the pearls of knowledge, today we begin our first technical session. Our speaker is already amongst us, a distinguished personality, Dr. Naveen Halappa. He's BNY's medical graduate, master in yoga therapy, Manipal University, UGC NET qualified in yoga, and first BNYs to get PhD in yoga and psychiatry from NIMHANS, Bangalore. He's the first to serve as a chair yoga at Leibniz University, Germany, representing Government of India. He has 14 international level publications, 375 citations, and 2 books in his credit. He has won 2 International Travel Grant Awards and 2 Research Presentation Awards in international conferences. He is a receiver of 2 research projects, grants from Ayush and DST, Government of India. He is the reviewer of International Journal of Yoga and Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine. Currently, he is working as a principal, dean, and medical superintendent at Yenopa Naturopathy and Yogic Sciences College and Hospital, Bangalore. Today, he'll be enlightening us on yoga and naturopathy nutrition in mood and developmental disorders. I welcome you, sir, and invite you for the session. Thank you. So you are muted, actually. Yeah.
Post disabled participant screen sharing is coming.
Yeah.
Could you unmute that? Disable that?
Just a second.
Yeah. Is it visible now?
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah. Okay. At the outset, I would like to congratulate the organizers for making this possible to have virtual conference, second virtual conference, which has been highly beneficial to all the students and faculty and also general public. I would like to thank you for a nice introduction, Doctor. Today's session, I will be talking about yoga and naturopathic nutrition in mood and developmental disorders. So I'll be talking about introduction to naturopathy and yoga and mental health. Then I'll be talking about mood and developmental disorders, depression, bipolar, and ADHD and autism. And evidence of yoga and naturopathic nutrition in mood and developmental disorders. Finally, the take-home message. So I think all these things have been covered, what we can expect from naturopathy and yoga doctors. So just I skip these slides, move on. And even health also depends upon ahara, vichara, vyayama, vihara, and virama. Today I will be talking about food and vyayama here. So we need to understand what is mental health. All of you know about what is health according to World Health Organization. It is not just merely an absence of disease. It is the well-being of physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being. But in addition to that, yoga talks about spiritual well-being, which is very, very important. One more aspect is mental health. As you know, Swami Vivekananda said, each soul is potentially divine. All of us cannot become doctors or engineers or executives. So each and everyone has some skills. We need to identify that, and we need to move on. And in one or the other way, we have to contribute to the society. As you know, nowadays we have been coming across lots of stressors and pressures in day-to-day life. If you're able to cope up with that, and if you maintain a good health, what we call is mental health. In Bhagavad Gita, also very nicely portrayed about how the mentally health person, Sthita Prajna. So if you look at here in the 2017 World Health Day theme is depression. Let's talk. Generally, what will happen is we would like to maintain some standard. We don't even talk to the neighbors. Even in workplace, we don't interact with the other colleagues. This would end up with the depression. One of the scientific evidence which says joint family, those who are in joint family, they are less depressed and anxious because they talk to each other, they share different feelings. When it comes to yoga, main preference has been given on mental health, different shlokas. I don't want to go in detail. And evidence talks about structural and functional neuroplasticity in long-term meditators. Cortical thickness we could observe those who practice meditation for long. This also indirectly, directly correlates with mental health of an individual. Then the research evidence has been on different psychiatric disorders. Today I will be talking about depressive disorder, ADHD and ASD. Bipolar disorder, the evidence is very, very preliminary. I'm not going to talk about that. So when we talk about mental disorders, all these areas which will be disturbed, thinking aspect, perception, behavior, signaling. You can think about neuronal signaling or synaptic consolidation, emotions, and physical symptoms. So generally, what is mood? We are talking about mood disorders today. Mood is nothing but it is a state of self in relation to its environment. So generally, we need to think about what is pathological mood, what is normal, and what is pathological. If the person suffers from the mood-related disturbance, and also if other people surrounding him would suffer because of him, then we can say it is a pathological mood. And questions we can put it across is the person is suffering? Is the expression of mood is inappropriate in the current social settings? So I would like to depict here with this integrated model of etiology for mood disorders. Generally, biological factors which we can attribute to deficiency of or alteration of different neurotransmitters and even growth factors. Neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, GABA deficiency, or even growth factors deficiency like BDNF, now growth factor, and psychological factors like childhood stressors plays a very important role. Even parenting skills is very, very important for any individual to grow as a mentally healthy individual. And also social factors, how you interact with your surroundings, with your friends, colleagues, that also makes more sense. So if these three will have disturbance, the person will be vulnerable and the protective factors will be missing here and you will end up with the mood disorder. Monoamine hypothesis of depression. If we look at only this monoamine hypothesis, still patients with depression, they don't get better, almost more than 50%. So this makes us to think something beyond which exists where the pathophysiology of mood disorder is concerned. That is where neuroplasticity comes into picture. Almost 20 to 25 years before, we thought that brain doesn't develop after a certain age. It is not so. It depends upon what kind of lifestyle which you choose, what kind of diet which you take, how regular you are with the exercise. Moderate and regular exercise is very key to have optimum health. At the same time, how you are able to cope up with your day-to-day stressors with relaxation. So this will help in increasing, neuronal signaling and even synaptic consolidation, synaptic signaling, okay, and even glial cells function. So depression, let me talk about depression now. Depression is expected to be the leading illness by 2020. Already we have covered that. and 2030 it may become top one. That is the prediction as per the World Health Organization. Current treatment for depression mainly on antidepressant medication and psychotherapy. However, the risk of relapse and illness tend to get worse with multiple episodes. I have seen in at NIMHANS where I was working, which is 2 crore project, and we had Advanced Center for Yoga Therapy and Research. Under that, I was working as a yoga therapy consultant and senior research fellow. What I could see is most of them, they have been taking medication for long. So in the beginning itself, we can manage with the help of yoga, exercise, and other naturopathy treatment modalities. So, and also many medications which has worse scenario in the form of adverse side effects and poor control. So if you look at Indian scenario, also almost 5% of 5 to 6% of everyone in their lifestyle, they would come across depression episode, and 2 to 3% they get those with depression. So you can see here the mood, how our normal mood should be, should have smile throughout the day. So these are the clinical features as per the DSM-4 criteria. Typical features according to DSM-4 criteria for major depressive disorder is depressed mood. The person will be dull and he will be, his mood will be low, and he will be sad. And apathy, loss of interest. Suppose anhedonia, which we call, suppose a person has enjoyed playing the badminton or cricket. Now he is not in a position to enjoy that moment, what we call anhedonia. And then other atypical features like weight changes, it may be weight gain or weight loss, then sleep disturbances, psychomotor agitation, anxiety you may have, or fatigability you will have, then worthlessness, hopelessness, then executive function will be disturbed. The way you plan the different strategies, the way you think, the way you learn, that will be disturbed, and suicidal ideation. And also according to ICD-10, we have libido, loss of sexual dysfunction. There are different types of depressive disorder. I don't want to go in detail. Majorly, we come across major depressive disorder and dysthymia. So here, neuroplasticity model, psychosocial stress, which give rise to impairment in the neuroplasticity and then give rise to depression. So these are the DSM-4 symptom dimensions of a manic episode. As you know, mood disorder, which constitute even bipolar disorder, their very important aspect is the person will have hypermania, manic episode. The mood will be elevated beyond the normal, mood level. So you will have elevated expansive mood, irritable mood. That is the typical symptoms. And atypical symptoms like inflated self-esteem, grandiosity, increased goal-directed activity or agitation, decreased needs for sleep, risk-taking behavior is more in them. Then distractible concentration, more talkative moves, pressured speech, flight of ideas, racing of thoughts. Then let us go with the evidence which we have in yoga and naturopathy. In yoga, yoga backbends are very useful to reduce the mood swings and to improve the positive emotions. And Sahaj Yoga is one kind of meditation where they have seen the verbal working memory, psychomotor speed, attention has been improved, even executive functions in patients with depression after they practice Sahaj Yoga meditation. See, this is how we need to prepare a yoga therapy module. We need to look at the traditional literature and also contemporary yoga texts. What is there in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Gananda Samhita, and other like MDNY or Yasvyasa, CCRYN. So many other schools we need to look at, and then physiological effects, how each and every practices would act physiologically on our body. We need to think about, and based on the common sense in our clinical observations and research evidence. So based on this, we have to prepare a yoga module that we did at NIMHANS, where we came up with development and validation of yoga therapy module for depression. Possibly this is the first time which the study has been done on development and validation of yoga module in psychiatric conditions across the globe. And then nowadays we have many other modules has come up. And according to this validated yoga module with the help of experts, we came to consensus that backbending postures are useful, inverted postures are useful, fast breathing exercises are useful, And even slow breathing exercises are useful, deep breathing. Then meditation, again, meditation should not be taught for long. It can be of maximum 15 minutes. That too, chanting meditation is much better for depressed patients. And yogi counseling. Again, yogi counseling is nothing but what traditional references are there in Yoga Vasishta, Bhagavad Gita, then Patanjali Yoga Sutra, the immense knowledge to the whole world. So those psychological aspects to be followed. In fact, when I started seeing patients with depression at NIMHANS, what I observed, their motivation level is very low. We need to counsel them. This is very, very important to start with. Then I could see with yoga has been progressed, the sleep quality was improved. That is the first sign which we could observe in patients with depression, along with the improvement in appetite and all these aspects. So back bending postures, Surya Namaskara is extremely useful. Then the study which we did at NIMHANS, what we could observe, those who practiced yoga regularly, for more than 50 days in 90 days period, we could see a decrease in the depression scores and also elevation in BDNF level, one of the growth factor which is highly responsible in the pathophysiology of depression. Then also we could see the stress hormone, cortisol, level has reduced after the regular yoga practice. Along with that, we could observe, drop in cortisol level you could see here. And along with that, we could see the correlation between cortisol and BDNF levels, where cortisol level has come down and BDNF level increased. That is what very important finding. We could see so much this research paper has advanced. Now both of the research papers has more than 100 citations. And also we could see there was correlation between trail making A, that is the psychomotor speed, and part of executive function, and also correlation between BDNF level, where BDNF level increased and simultaneously the trail making test psychomotor speed level has been increased, attention has been increased. So nutritional neuroscience is the area which has been highly prevalent now in psychiatry research field. Their importance has been given on what kind of diet which we consume that would make up our mind, even since from the pregnancy period, then infancy period, then childhood period, then adult period. Nutrition is a very important factor. So prenatal and postnatal diet is very important in the mental health of the mother. So what that would give rise to better health in the offspring. In unbalanced nutrition, for example, if you consume more of simple carbohydrates, and particularly refined fats, that would add up in the development of depression. So diet plays a very important role. And we know that neurotransmitters and hormones has been made out of the proteins. That is the reason we need to consume proteins, particularly alfalfa or green gram or Bengal gram. This plays a very important role, that too in the form of a sprouted form, where vitamin C will be liberated, which acts as antioxidant. So this is highly implicated in different psychiatric disorders like major depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety, eating disorders, ADHD, autism, addiction, etc. So healthy fat is very, very important, as we know that healthy fat is very, very important. For example, coconut, already a lot of research has been done on coconut, and to reduce the neuroinflammation, which is the key factor in these neurodevelopmental and depression. And walnuts, omega-3 fatty acids, and almonds. These healthy nuts consumption is very, very important. And here, which we discussed, like protein, neurotransmitters and hormones has been made out of the proteins. So amino acids is very, very important. We need to consume the amino acids. Whey protein, you can consume along with the sprouts, etc. And also which influences the omega-3 fatty acids, functions. So one more study which was done here. I don't know, full slides are not visible. Okay, so probiotics and prebiotics. This is the upcoming nutritional neuroscience evidence, where a lot of evidence has been gathered on pre and probiotics in psychiatric disorders. So what main aspect is the gut and brain axis. where the gut has a interrelationship with the brain, and it has a capacity to produce different neurotransmitters. Okay, for example, dopamine, serotonin, GABA, which has been highly implicated in anxiety and depression. Okay, so all these aspects, and the food is very important for the bacteria to function better. So there, the oligosaccharides, prebiotics, what we consume in the form of dietary fiber, which is vital in the functioning of the bacteria, healthy bacteria. So this is the mechanism here, like the normal microbiota function, what we call eubiosis. This is the abnormal microbiota function, what we call dysbiosis, which alter different neurotransmitters profile. And also, dysbiosis will give rise to, because of the leaky gut, it may have adverse impact on pro-inflammatory cytokines, and also the BDNF impairment may do happen. That would end up in neurodevelopmental and neurodegenerative disorders, abnormal behavior and cognition. And also it has been implicated microglia, which is very, very important, is a part of, the type of glial cells which is there in the brain and spinal cord, which plays a very, very important role in the neuroinflammation. Even exaggerated microglia activation also is not good for us, because the immune status mainly start first from the microglia, particularly in the central nervous system and eyes particularly. So these are the like different bacterial strain which has the capacity to produce different neurotransmitters, like lactobacillus, which has been highly prevalent in most of the medications nowadays which we have in the market, which produce GABA, which has been highly implicated in anxiety and depression. Then we have Escherichia, Bacillus, all these will produce noradrenaline. Then Candida albicans, Streptococcus strain, which produce serotonin, then Bacillus, which produce the dopamine. Dopamine again highly implicated in schizophrenia. Dopamine level will be more. In ADHD, dopamine level will be very less. In depression, dopamine level will be less. And Lactobacillus albicans, which produce acetylcholine. So here one recent study in 2020, it is a review paper where they could attribute diet and microbiota and how it will have implication on depression and anxiety. In Canadian Network for Mood and Anxiety Treatment, in 2016, this study was published where they could identify for mild to moderate depression, exercise, light therapy, St. John wort, herb, which is highly implicated in depression, omega-3 fatty acids, again by managing the neuroinflammation, and adenosine L-methionine, the serotonin derivative, and yoga plays a very important role in mild to moderate depression. And moderate to severe depression, as adjunct therapy, exercise and St. John wort will be useful. This is the book which we published when I was at NIMHANS, Yoga Therapy for Depression. And we will move on to developmental disorders for another 5 minutes. Here, particularly we can say about neurodevelopmental disorders, ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. ADHD is the condition, childhood related psychiatric conditions where research has been gathered more. And nowadays, autism research has been taking more stand. And ADHD, where the attention will be impaired and hyperactivity will be more, and the child will be having more impulsivity, restlessness. If you look at the prevalence rate, almost 4 to 1 male to female ratio, if we look at the autism prevalence is concerned. And 1 in 59 children in USA has been suffering from autism spectrum disorder. And 1 in 10 children between 5 and 17 years receives ADHD diagnosis. So that is the reason ADHD is highly prevalent among children. So these are the different symptoms of ADHD: inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. So they are the one, they are more prone to accident because of restlessness, impulsivity. So there are some studies which have been done on yoga. They could see improvement in ADHD symptoms. Their attention has been improved. Their hyperactivity level has been reduced. Particularly, Om meditation has been found to be useful to reduce the hyperactivity. This small study was done at NIMHANS, where they could see improvement in ADHD symptoms. The autism, where they will have decreased social interaction and restricted repetitive behavior, stereotype. See, this kid has been sitting in one place. Their verbal and non-verbal communication has been impaired among these patients. So one study was done with yoga where they could observe, along with psychotherapy, they could observe, applied behavior analysis. That's one part of psychotherapy. They could see improvement in eye-to-eye contact, body posture, depth perception and balance, self-stimulatory behavior, and receptive skills, and repetitive stereotype behavior. Like somewhere he is going and sitting in idle place, sitting quiet. So this kind of behavior has been reduced after the yoga practice. These are the yoga practices. There is one recent review which has been highly useful to all of you, where they could look at the developmental disorders and the story of neuroinflammation, where they could understand the pregnancy period. If the inflammation is more, if we don't consume better balanced diet and nutrition, that would give rise to problem for the offsprings in terms of neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, ADHD, schizophrenia, and also the mood disorders like anxiety, bipolar. I mean depression and bipolar. So here again, they are highlighting the importance of gut microbiome and also microglial activation in the nervous system, which is pro-inflammatory in nature. So this is very important picture where they have portrayed in this form, where the proper nutrition is important, balanced diet is very important. Then even genetic programming has been done better with the help of maintaining with the balanced diet with healthy protein, healthy fat rather than simple and complex carbohydrates, including rice, wheat, or ragi. Again, which is of a complex carbohydrates. Then imbalanced diet, which gives rise to autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and schizophrenia, and other neurodevelopmental disorders. And leaky gut also they have been given importance here, and that will be the cause of pro-inflammatory cytokines release and even the microglial activation. Role of marine omega-3 in human neurodevelopment, including autism spectrum disorders and ADHD, a review which was published recently, and even they could attribute deficiency of omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA, which plays a very important role. That is the reason pregnant women required to consume at least 200 milligram of DHA in the form of supplement during the pregnancy period. Is very important in the third trimester and even during the lactation period. So the role of gut-brain axis in the etiology of autism spectrum disorder. This picture which talks about different aspects which we discussed, even dietary fiber which give rise to short chain fatty acids, and how the dysbiosis will happen, leaky gut, and end up with neurodevelopmental disorders and impaired social communication. So summary of yoga and nutrition in child mental health disorders. There is some evidence with yoga with autism and ADHD, and also the dietary. We have some evidence omega-3 fatty acids. DHA is beneficial, and reviews of multiple studies suggest that yoga can be effective as a complementary treatment for ADHD, and yoga is useful in mood swings, temper outputs, and crying fits among ADHD. Microbiota health is very, very important in mood disorders and also neurodevelopmental disorders like ADHD and autism. So these are some of the possible mechanisms how yoga and naturopathic nutrition could be useful. Generally, the hypothalamo-pituitary axis regulation would take place when you practice yoga, and also the parasympathetic activation will be more compared to sympathetic activation, and the stimulation of vagus nerve, which is very vital with the improvement of yoga. As I discussed, development and validation of yoga module. So most of these practices, for example, Bhastrika or Ujjayi or Kapalabhati, then deep breathing, Nadi Shuddhi, particularly Brahmari, which enhances the level of nitric oxide in our body, which acts as against the pro-inflammatory condition, reduces the inflammation in our body. So these practices are very, very important, which Vagus nerve function also will be enhanced when you practice all these breathing exercises, particularly. Then regulation of neurotransmitters, which should take place with the practice of yoga, and sleep quality particularly can be improved with the practice of yoga. And the cognitive functions like attention, memory, and executive functions can be improved. And the changes in the EEG pattern in the cerebral neurophysiology uh, with the elevation of alpha signal can be improved, and even delta. Then reduction in pro-inflammatory cytokines and improvement in emotional regulation. Generally, those who practice yoga, particularly mindfulness, mindfulness is nothing but the person will have attention towards his body, towards his mind, towards his breathing, towards interoception, what is happening inside, the sensation. So if you could do that, then if you maintain the mindfulness, then gradually thoughts will come down. We say that thoughts are the main cause of all these psychiatric conditions. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Initially, if he has 100 thoughts, then he can reduce with the help of mindfulness, 50 thoughts, then 30, then 10. Generally, what will happen if you practice yoga with mindfulness, the benefits are multifold. If you practice yoga in between, if you think about something else, then it doesn't give you the desired benefits. And also yoga and naturopathic nutrition would help to reduce the oxidative stress and also the inflammation, that is chronic inflammation. Take home message: for mild to moderate depression, omega-3 fatty acids and yes, adenosyl L-methionine, serotonin derivative, and yoga can be practiced. Yoga practices enhances serum BDNF levels, reduce cortisol levels, and improve neuropsychological functions. So we advise everyone to practice regular yoga practice. Then pre and probiotics, particularly DHA, are useful treatment modalities in the mood and neurodevelopmental disorders. Yoga as a lifestyle will give rise to more benefits, because what research which we have right now, which is with yoga therapy module for 50 to 45 to 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour. If you use yoga as a lifestyle, then the benefits will be more, evidence also will be more, which is positive. Then methodological issues in yoga research is there, like double blinding and triple blinding cannot be done. Placebo also is a great challenge. However, single blinding can be done, where researcher can be, rater can be blinded to assess different parameters. So I think I have concluded my session in almost 26 minutes. Any questions from the audience? Will be.
Yes, sir. We have a
happy.
question. Why do we breathe rapidly, which is hyperventilation, during anxiety or some mood disorders, by one of the participants?
Yeah, exactly. So what would happen is we have two very important nervous system. If we talk about, like sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Generally, if we are more anxious, our sympathetic functions will be more, where the breathing rate will be more, our heart rate will be more, our blood pressure will be more. Particularly, your digestion secretion will be less, gastric motility will be less, even intestinal secretion will be less. You tend to get constipated. So here, the main key aspect is to improve parasympathetic nervous system functions. That will be possible with the practice of yoga, which I highlighted, where by stimulating vagus nerve, which is possible. Even Brahmari Pranayama, which stimulate the vagus nerve, and different fast breathing exercises, slow breathing exercises, which stimulate the vagus nerve, which is the key in modulating our nervous system functions.
Another question is, what are the sources of omega-3 fatty acids, which can get in day-to-day life?
Exactly. So omega-3 fatty acids, which is enriched in our food, like flaxseed and the walnuts, which you can consume. I prefer all of you, those who want to have optimum health, kindly consume walnuts and flaxseed in the morning as a breakfast. This should help you to improve your health. And non-vegetarian items, fish, again mackerel and sardine, this kind of fishes will have more of omega-3 fatty acids, which can be taken as a supplement, but naturopathy, we don't advise that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You very nicely explained how our diet and yoga and naturopathy plays a role in stress management, affecting our mood. Because nowadays, almost all the disorders, which are the first line of cause, is getting us stressed. The more we are stressed, and if diet something which can help us with our mood, it will be definitely beneficial. Very nicely you explained. It was really a very informative session. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank Moving ahead with our next session. Amongst us is internationally renowned, charming personality in the field of medicine and yoga from US, Dr. Renu Mehtani. Prevent the preventable and manage the inevitable is Dr. Renu Mehtani's practical and holistic attitude towards arriving at comprehensive treatment plans for her patients. As a healer, she found Param Yoga. She's practicing physician in Pune since 1992. As a doctor of medicine, she was associated with intensive cardiac care unit at Ruby Hall Clinic, Pune for first 6 years. She then set out her own journey, which led to holistic healing. She has innumerable credentials in both the field of medicine and yoga. Fellowship in Metabolic and Nutritional Medicine, USA. Fellowship, Indian Nutritional and Environmental Medicine in Yoga. Associated with Yoga for Cardiac and Cancer Training, Dr. Dean Ornish Certification, USA. She has trained over 200 yoga and gym teachers, physiotherapists, and other training professionals. With the vision, the best possible health for all, she has been committed to provide deep and lasting health solutions. I invite you, ma'am, and welcome you wholeheartedly. Today, she'll be enlightening us on the topic vitamin D and immunity. Dr. Renu Mehtani.
Thank you so much for this very kind and warm introduction. It's indeed my pleasure to get this opportunity to share something with you all, this august audience. Thank you very much. So just give me a second. I'll just start my screen sharing, please.
Sure.
Thank you. So I hope it's visible. Can I begin now?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Thank you. So friends, pleasure to be with you all. And as you can see, the topic on which I have to share my thoughts is on the role which vitamin D plays in our immunity, which has really become a hot topic today with so many immune issues, especially COVID-19 in the air. And not just COVID-19, but its various mutants, changing forms, where we have to not only depend on physical barriers, but also strengthen ourselves physiologically from inside out. So, well, friends, as you know that I am very passionate about yoga, the way I practice medicine, being a consulting physician, I have come to realize in the last 30 years that the yoga practices, the pranayamic practices, they are just awesome. You know, they are like a wonderful software you are installing and you want to, sort of work with it. But the hardware, that is our body, it needs some petrol before all these therapies work better. And what is one of the most important petrol today is vitamin D. Vitamin D has become a global deficiency, a pandemic on its own. And at the same time, it is the elixir to good health coming to us through sunlight, through natural methods. It's actually natural vitamin, or let's say a provitamin that comes to us. But the sad part is that the deficiency is a pandemic. We were trained to believe that vitamin D is needed to prevent rickets and weakness of bones. But this understanding about this vital nutrient is very limited. It's like the tip of an iceberg, as you can see here, because there is a vast list of other problems, which form a much bigger proportion, right? And here too, vitamin D plays a very, very important role. In fact, there are many studies that have come up. It started with just prevention of flu, that good amount of vitamin D is needed to prevent flu. And the understanding has to evolve because our limited understanding that vitamin D works on the bones has to be understood deeper, since the nucleus of every cell in the body has receptors to vitamin D. Now, this is a fascinating finding. So what does it mean? It means that vitamin D plays a role on every cell of our body, since the nucleus has VDR, or the vitamin D receptor. So see the paradox. On one side, there is a deficiency globally, even in India, being a tropical country. This is something very difficult to digest, that, oh, we are a sunny climate, yet we have vitamin D deficiency. It's very difficult to believe. But friends, this is the only vitamin that deficiency, one of the vitamins that you can check and know the status and know that in how deep water are we in. So it's a global deficiency. On one side, it works on every cell of the body. On this juncture, we can say that vitamin D is not just an optional supplement that kha lenge. We'll take it, we'll see, right? We'll pick up any one and pick it up. It is a non-negotiable cellular necessity, means it is a must for cellular health. It is a very important support system to good health. And in today's time, where we are all struggling to find out solutions and get back life to normal everywhere, on one side, and then on the other side, there are fears of second wave and third wave and all these issues coming up. There are so many mechanisms which have been elucidated, right, on how this vitamin D, 125 dihydroxy D as it is called, is working on various pathways. Honestly, friends, I don't want to get into it now because time is less, and I would like to share the practical part of it, which we can start implementing, right? So vitamin D has mechanisms on the renin-angiotensin system, on the AC2 receptors, on the bradykinin system. And if we put it into a nutshell, it has various mechanisms to nip the problem. And one of the most easy ones that I can tell, simplest, is local immunity, right? So a person who has good levels of vitamin D in blood will also produce natural antiviral, natural antibacterials at the local site, which are called as defensins and cathelicidins. Okay, so this picture beautifully shows that if the coronavirus, which has the spike and the spike protein, it's attacking a person. And these are all the protectors, the antibacterials, antivirals, which the body naturally makes in the mucosa into the cells, the defensins and the cathelicidins. They will cover the spike protein, the spikes, the corona spike, and prevent the virulence or the attack of the virus into the body. One very important mechanism. Then mechanisms to nip the respiratory distress syndrome and multiple organ failure, right? So vitamin D works through the renin-angiotensin system, which we might be remembering studying in our initial medical training, that this mechanism of renin-angiotensin is to, it leads to production of something called as angiotensin 2, which is a very powerful vasoconstrictor. And we studied these pathways in the genesis of hypertension. So it is also found that this angiotensin 2 is a very pro-inflammatory chemical in the body, means it suddenly leads to the release of cytokines, which are inflammatory in nature. But this vitamin D can prevent this entire cascade by working on the nucleus of the cells and stopping the production of renin, nipping the entire cascade at the start level. So friends, without going into very technical points, there are many mechanisms. Vitamin D works at the level of natural immunity, adaptive immune response, and can nip the cytokine storm. And we have been seeing it practically also while dealing with so many people, so many patients in this crucial time. So let's get to the practical part, right? A question, a big question. Am I getting enough vitamin D, right? Is it enough for me? Mil raha hai kya? So let's understand that vitamin D levels, if we check it in blood, they come in nanograms per ml, all right? And we are somehow trained to believe that, okay, if it is 20 to 30 nanogram, it's fine. Well, friends, that would be enough to just prevent rickets, but not these immune protective functions of vitamin D. In fact, in early 80s, as you can see in this graph, the vitamin D levels used to be much above 20-30. They were above 50. Our ancestors, in fact, in the primordial years, it is found they had vitamin D levels of even 70 to 80 nanogram per ml. Okay, so the levels which were above 50 in early 80s have started to decline, as you can see. And where do we stand today? In this century of ours, the levels that we see today are way below even 20. It's shocking to see reports of 3, 4, unbelievable. So this slide is telling how our ancestors used to have high levels of vitamin D as they were outdoor personalities. They would not be sitting inside the homes like us. So just believing that 20 nanogram levels in my blood is adequate, it is like hitting in the dark. In fact, 40 is the minimal desired level. It has been accepted. Friends, some labs check vitamin D levels in another unit that is called as nanomoles, nanomoles per ml. If that is the report, the figurative value has to be divided by 2.5 to get the actual levels in nanogram per ml, the unit in which we internationally talk about vitamin D levels. So you may see a blood level of 100 nanomoles and say, wow, my blood levels are 100. But friends, the unit, mind you, if it's in nanomoles, divided by 2.5. So if it is 100 nanomoles, the actual vitamin D levels will be 40 nanogram per ml, right? So this is how we get to know our blood levels. All right. Well, let's move ahead. That minimal level of vitamin D that is needed to have protection against common viral respiratory infections is 40 nanogram per ml. Okay, just note this point. And now moving ahead in today's time, where we are going through, tough viral infections, especially this COVID-19, it's found that even 40 may not be enough. 40 to 60, you have to go above 40 would be optimal. And in fact, now there are more papers coming that 60 to 80 nanogram per ml would be a good blood level of vitamin D to protect against COVID-19 disease. Okay. And this blood level, which goes up, well, friends, it is beneficial to other problems as well. So as the vitamin D levels go up, 20, 40, 60, 80 nanogram per ml, the incidence of the dreaded diseases like all the cancers, diabetes, type 1 diabetes, heart attacks, it all comes down. So the benefits literally spill out to all organs of the body. So let's target blood levels of 40 to 80, right? A big range, or let us say 60 to 80 nanograms per ml in today's time. And to achieve that, sunlight. Do we think sunlight alone can meet our challenges today? Because we are practically indoor personalities. We are sitting at homes, and even when we come out, we cover ourselves. There is a lot of sun phobia in the society, right? We are scared of the skin getting burnt off. We are scared of certain skin cancers. So we either cover ourselves or we use sunscreens when we come out. So with that, we really cannot get the optimal vitamin D levels. Also, let us note that our ancestors used to get 90% of their vitamin D levels by sweating in the sun, okay? And 10% would come from diet. So if we have that thought in mind that I'm eating healthy, I have a very healthy diet, I'm taking the best health foods, but friends, even those foods do not contain vitamin D. In fact, vegetarian foods are devoid of vitamin D. And India is predominantly a vegetarian country, right? We do have people who take non-vegetarian, but it's not like a part of our day-to-day, everyday meal, right? So that's one reason we see vitamin D deficiency in India. And it is found that even people who are working out in the sun or who are sports freaks and who are into sports activities, even there we do not really get to see the blood level, the minimal blood level of 40 nanogram, right? It is sad, but it is true. We do not see it. Whatever, there are many other factors for vitamin D deficiency, like suboptimal functioning, liver, gut, absorption problems, magnesium deficiency, which leads to poor absorption of, or let us say, poor activation of vitamin D. So friends, the gist of the story is that we cannot become outdoor farmers today, right? Two, food is devoid of vitamin D. So we have an option of taking the supplements. So thanks to technology, thanks to pharmaceutical industry, that they're able to produce this natural element we all need in the form of a pill. So it's not anything like allopathy, right? It is something which all pathies need to correct before they initiate their pathy, because when any pathy was made, let us say 100 years back, right, that time there was not that much of vitamin D deficiency as we have today. So we have to get back to that time, correct the vitamin D deficiency, then initiate the pathies for better results. So friends, coming to how much supplements, what dose is needed. So vitamin D preparations are in international units. Okay, there are preparations which range with vitamin D from 400 IUs to 60,000 international units. Okay, so how much do we really need? It is found that one needs on an average 9,000 international units per day to reach 40 nanogram per ml. Let's understand this. I wish we had time, but I can just share with you some summaries. This is a lovely paper, a 21st century evaluation of the safety of oral vitamin D. It says that as outdoor personalities, our ancestors could make how much per day? 10,000 to even 25,000 IUs vitamin D daily. And it is now clear, proven, that if somebody is taking long term, daily 10,000 IUs per day, it is physiological. It is not going to create any problems in that person. All right. So there are standards which are set, which are called as no observed adverse effect levels. So for adults, 10,000 IUs or international units per day is fine. For young adolescents in the age group of 11 to 17, 4,000 IUs per day is fine. And for children who are, say, between 2 to 10 years of age, a 2,000 international units per day intake would be good to meet the requirement. So certain food sources which could be having vitamin D, well friends, one egg yolk has 40 IUs. So even if today I need 4,000 international IUs, will I take 10 egg yolks per day? It's not possible. All right. Fish, certain sea fish, right? How much can we take? And milk per se does not have vitamin D. It has calcium, but not vitamin D. So there are some countries where milk is fortified, means vitamin D has been added. But in India, there is no fortification policy for milk products. So we have very limited choices. One will have to drink 100 glasses of fortified milk to meet the daily requirement. Friends, okay? And sun exposure, yes, it's important to know that how much should I be going in the sun to be producing adequate vitamin D? Well, friends, number one is what time of the day. If my morning walk at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., is that adequate to give me my daily dose of vitamin D? The answer is a big no, because we get the beneficial ultraviolet B rays when we are out in the sun between 10 a.m. to 2 to 3 p.m. You know, it varies from two different parts of the country, but 10 to 2, let's keep it like that. Okay. With our body at least 60 to 70% exposed without having sunscreens or without covering them with cloth, and being in the sun for at least 20 to 30 minutes at that time with that much degree of exposure. And provided our internal organs are working well, we have healthy liver, healthy kidneys, healthy absorptive function from the gut, and the necessary magnesium is in adequate quantities, then this will be adequate. And unfortunately, it doesn't really happen, because we see blood reports of vitamin D deficiency rampantly. Okay. So in today's time, either we become a farmer, we take supplements, or later we will need to take medicines, which I'm sure nobody wants to do. So let us see how much vitamin D can we take or we must take. So since I'm from India and most of us are from India, the commonest preparation that is available in our country is having 60,000 international units of vitamin D per preparation, whether it's a tablet or a gel cap or a sachet, right? We say 60K. That's how we talk about it, 60K. 60K means 60,000 international units is present per unit of it. So how do we take it? And yeah, this slide shows the sad state of blood levels of vitamin D today. You can see vitamin D less than 3, 8, 9. It's really, really scary. So we have 60,000. Good news, there's one more interesting thing to share with you. When there was a bad H1N1 time or the influenza time in the Western countries, a technique of improving vitamin D status was used, and it was called as vitamin D hammer dose. Hammer means hathoda, the way we can just with few blows hammer a nail inside a wall or a wood. Similarly, with few blows, how can we increase the vitamin D level? So what was done at that time to treat influenza was they have a preparation which has 50,000 international units of vitamin D. All right. So they gave 50,000 daily for 3 days to immediately boost the levels up and then put them on a maintenance dose. And what was found that people, when they gave them this vitamin D hammer dose, 50,000 daily for 2-3 days, they could nip the problem of influenza. So we have been using this to our advantage in our country, in other countries in this COVID time, vitamin D hammer dose. So how do we take vitamin D? Which category, how much to give? There's one group of people, which is really a big group, who are not taking any vitamin D. Or they might have taken it in the past, which obviously gets utilized. So it has to be on a maintenance. Because it's seen that many of the practitioners in medicine, they give vitamin D for a while, let us say a couple of months, and then it is stopped. Or very low maintenance doses are given. Okay, so that is not adequate. And the commonest maintenance dose we see in India is 60,000 one per month, which is not adequate to meet the response, to meet the requirement of the immune organs. So the category of people who are not taking any vitamin D or who have taken it in the past, or even maybe they are taking once per month, that's 60,000, it's too low a dose. And if we check their blood levels, we will find the levels to be less than 20, as you can see here. So vitamin D hammer has to be given, because in present moment, we can't expect everyone to go for a vitamin D check. And we are seeing this, it is there. There is no harm taking vitamin D. The way we eat food, vitamin D is cellular food, okay? And this is the safe dose which we can take if we fall in this category. So vitamin D hammer dose, that's 60K international units daily for 3, not just 3, why we have gone up to 5. In fact, now it is even up to 7 days because the levels are so low. Plus, obese people whose body weight is high, they have to take more vitamin D, 2 to 3 times the dose. So taking it as adults for 3 to 5 days and then taking 60,000 once a week for at least 2 to 3 months. And then the maintenance dose should be minimal, 60K IU once in 15 days to continue. If we do not continue, obviously the levels are going to drop down again and we'll have to start from the scratch when we initiate the treatment again. So that becomes a maintenance dose. If we start now at the starting point with 60K IU once in 15 days, it's not going to meet the requirement because we have to first bring the levels up to some optimal level and then we try to, sort of maintain the levels. All right. Okay, then there's another category of people who are taking vitamin D, but the doses are not adequate, not enough. And these are those people who are taking let us say vitamin D once in 15 days or once a month. So if I take vitamin D 60K once a month, I'm actually taking 2000 IUs daily. And if I take it once in 15 days, I'm taking 4000 IUs per day. And the blood levels here are found to be between 25 to 35 nanogram per ml. So this could be adequate to prevent rickets, but not to give us the immune protection. So here the hammer dose is given today because we are going through a crisis for 2 to 3 days. And then 60K once a week for 2 to 3 months. And then the maintenance dose has to remain at 60K once in 15 days. Well, friends, if the blood levels can be checked, nothing like that at the start and again after 3 to 4 months. But otherwise, this recommendation is a very, very safe protocol for today's time. This is a beautiful study. In fact, there are many studies that have come up where vitamin D has been given in higher than usual doses to COVID-19 people and the patients. This was a study which was done at PGI Chandigarh. I have highlighted it in blue here. Participants were given how much? 60,000 IU for 7 days daily. Okay, and what did they find? That their seroconversion, means conversion from COVID positive to COVID negative, was faster than those who were not given this 7 days 60K daily. All right. The fear of toxicity comes in the mind for all of us, isn't it? Well, before that, I will also like to tell you that there is another recent study which has come up from Andhra, Hyderabad, where they have given the same 60K for 8 to 10 days daily. And they have measured the inflammatory markers in COVID-19 patients who were hospitalized. Markers, IL-6, the ratio between neutrophils, lymphocytes, the LDH, they all were measured and they found that people who were given the vitamin D, the markers dropped down drastically. A very significant drop was seen as compared to those who were not given. And this dose will not be toxic. Friends, in India, don't we have injection of vitamin D, which we say 6 lakh IU? 6 lakh means 10 times 60K. So we are using it in general practice to immediately improve the deficiency status. So same here, 60K given over 8 to 10 days is like that 3/4 to 1 ampule of vitamin D injection given. All right. So this will not give toxicity even otherwise. And honestly, worrying about vitamin D toxicity is something which is not seen at all until somebody develops hypercalcemia or high calcium. Okay, so just worrying about vitamin D toxicity, as quoted by Dr. John Cannell, is like worrying about drowning when you are dying of thirst. So today we are dying of thirst. We need vitamin D for good health, but we are not taking it कि कहीं toxicity ना हो जाए. So this is a super, super remote possibility which has to be kept in mind. So let me come to sort of giving the gist of what I would like to share with you. Friends, let's acknowledge that vitamin D deficiency is a global pandemic. It is a very powerful, proven immunomodulator. It has a very important role to play. And when checked first time by people who are not taking any supplementation, we find very low vitamin D levels in our country too, in almost 90% or more population. Okay, nobody has been found with the minimal desired level of 40 nanogram per ml unless taking vitamin D supplements, especially in the urban and the semi-urban setup in our country. So friends, we lose nothing by improving the global vitamin D status because food does not have enough vitamin D. In fact, as doctors, it is our moral responsibility. It is our duty to correct this deficiency because it does play a very important role. And we are seeing that patients who've been given vitamin D have been able to tide over this crisis easily. And yes, the dose which I have shared with you is for common preventive application, right? to prevent what? COVID-19 disease. COVID can come without any symptoms. It's like any other viral infection. But COVID-19 disease is what we are scared of. And in case somebody does get COVID-19 disease, then the requirement of vitamin D is much more than what I have shared with you. And that, the doctors who are dealing with it, we are tackling it with much higher doses. And what do we find? That the patients, when they recover and we check their vitamin D levels, the levels have not really gone up very high. In fact, the body is found to be consuming a lot of vitamin D to meet this crisis and nipping the cytokine storm at the outset itself. So vitamin D, let's acknowledge that it's not just a vitamin, a mere vitamin. It's a prohormone, it's an immunomodulator, and also a powerful genetic modulator. And it's a very good treatment for people with autoimmune disorders, where the immune system is attacking our own self. You can see this picture of one of my patients with psoriasis. You can see here above and see how the skin has cleared. In fact, there is so much to share on this aspect, how vitamin D can treat autoimmune disorders. But this is a separate topic on its own, because here the principles of therapy are totally different than just correcting a deficiency. Okay, it's a medical management. So with this, I will sort of conclude my talk by wishing you all to be safe and feel much more confident by not only improving the vitamin D status, but building a strong physiological barrier and a proper responding body even to the vaccine. See, vaccine is also getting exposed to the virus in a different form, against which the body has to host an immune response. And to host a proper immune response, we need vitamin D. So it's a must. It's not a negotiable one, negotiable cellular necessity. It is something so crucial and so vital for humanity in 2021 and after. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Before moving to a question answer session, I would like to say you have really very sweet voice, very attractive to hear. So
Thank you.
to move on the question answers, we have some of the questions by the participants. What are the sources of vitamin D other than sunlight for children? Vegetarian sources.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I wish I had an answer for you. It's only supplementation.
For
Food,
kids,
vegetarian food has no vitamin D. Some mushrooms have it, but again, those mushrooms have to be chosen, selected, and they cannot meet our total requirement. Even as I mentioned, our ancestors, their 90% vitamin D requirement was met by their outdoor lifestyle. They would sweat out in the sun for 8 to 9 hours, and 10% would come from some food sources. So, sorry, I don't have anything to advise coming from food for children or adults, either way.
the next question is, this hammer dose doesn't cause any health issues?
Not at all. It is beneficial to health.
Okay.
And by not taking it, we are depriving ourselves. We are depriving ourselves, yeah.
And what is the best time of the day to take vitamin D supplements?
Yeah, it's in the morning, right? So it could be post-breakfast or post-lunch. Usually avoided taking in the nighttime, in the morning.
Okay. So thank you, ma'am. It's well said that keep your face always towards the sunshine, and the shadows of illness will fall behind you. So
Absolutely.
today our in this pandemic era, or in this era itself, we have 90% of the population which is vitamin D deficient. So your session was actually the need of the hour. So that was really very informative session. You very nicely explained the physiological mechanisms, how vitamin D is important for enhancing our immunity and how we can cope up with its deficiencies. I'm very, very grateful to you having you with us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All the best. Thank you.
Now to moving ahead with our sessions. Before any session, we'll be having one short documentary video of our hospital. So we'll be shortly starting with a video documentary on our Hospital, Sant Hirdaram Niche Cure Hospital, Aryo Kendra, Bhopal. I would like to say we are taking a short break of 15 minutes, and after that we'll be playing with the documentary video of our hospital, and then we'll be continuing with our today's sessions. Thank you. We'll meet soon.